The Supercommittee fails to cut over $1 trillion from the U.S. deficit over 10 years. Joining me to discuss the implications for the U.S. economy is Beth Ann Bovino, Deputy Chief Economist at Standard & Poor's. Beth Ann, the Supercommittee's rumored failure here will now trigger an automatic $1.2 trillion in spending cuts starting in 2013, including $600 billion from the Pentagon. What's going to be the impact on U.S. growth?
Well, I think this is one more step for the recovery to basically fail. I'm expecting the U.S. government to allow the extension of the payroll tax cuts, to allow the extension of the long-term unemployment benefits. If they go under, this is going to move this recession closer to recession.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of that small slice, and I mean the payroll tax cut and unemployment benefits, I read a note that amounts to about $180 billion. And if we don't get an extension of those, we're looking at 1% to 1.5 full percentage point from GDP in 2012, and that we will be in a recession.
That figure doesn't seem too out of line. One particular interesting point on this is if the committee does fail, that also means the Bush tax cuts go elapse at the end of 2012. Another hit to GDP and certainly to confidence in the U.S.
So then, in terms of those $1.2 trillion cuts that we might see then triggered in 2013, what is the impact? I read, it would be half a full percentage point to GDP, not as dramatic as the payroll tax cuts and unemployment benefits.
Several things that would happen. Certainly, there would be a cut in spending. You would see the defense also being hit hard. You would also see a loss of confidence, even already at recessionary levels. This would push things down even further. People wouldn't spend. You'd also see businesses being pulled back as well, because the lack of confidence and the worry that this recovery would turn into a recession would make business investments also very lackluster.
So in terms of the sectors that would be impacted, obviously defense, and then I'm hearing maybe consumer staples and possibly retail. Are there any other sectors that sort of jump out at you?
Well, think of what's going to happen with also the state and local. State and local would also be hit by this, because if the stimulus is cut, then you would also see certainly state and local being hurt already. Now, you've already seen state and local lose a lot of jobs, largely because they're cleaning up their balance sheets. This probably would even become more severe.
What about the option of a Plan B? Perhaps Congress winds up coming with the plan to cut half of that $1 trillion from the deficit. What does that do?
I was expecting that Congress to come up with something. What would happen there is that indeed that half would be cut, and then of course the other half would come through the trigger of automatic spending reductions. Although it will be a little bit less, it will be a little bit less severe. However, this is certainly would still be a little bit of a hit for the U.S. economy.
And not to mention the fact that if we wind up sort of cutting that money from the deficit, that trigger another downgrade from one of the rating agencies like Moody's or Fitch or Standard & Poor's.
And I'm not a rating analyst, so I can't really comment on what the rating analysts are saying on this. I can say that Moody's had said this is going to be something that would impact their decision, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it would automatically trigger a downgrade.
Do you think it will really impact Wall Street as well, not just U.S. growth?
I think this is going to add to the lack of confidence that we already have in the government. I'm afraid that people are going to be afraid what's going to happen. Well, they're going to recognize that, well, we're going to have more taxes down the road. This is going to keep people very concerned and spending that money that they have right now, because they're going to need it later on.
Washington's failure to come up with some kind of deficit reduction now puts the recession risk back on the table.